On today's show, who are the top 10 prospects drafted outside of the first round? We'll look at that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. My name is Hadi Kalikesh, the Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian Hyde, Director of European Scouting for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the top 10 prospects drafted outside of the first round. We're going to start off with the honorable mentions. We've got 5 of them. We're going to rapid round through them and go through picks 10 through 8 in the first segment. We're going to go through picks 7 through 4 in the second segment. And then in the third segment, we'll look at the top 3, which is a very, very difficult conversation. So stick around to the end to see how we broke that down. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of our rankings, what you think of the episode, what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. Alrighty, so let's go right into the honorable mentions here, and we're going to start off with 5 names. We're going to wrap it around through them because we've got a bunch of names to talk about. So first and foremost, the guys that didn't make the list but were really, really close, we've got Scott Morrow of the Carolina Hurricanes, drafted in the second round of, I want to say, the 2022 NHL draft. No, it was 2021, right? It was 2021, yes. Big right, well, not big, decently sized right-handed shot defenseman, really mobile, really active from the blue line, extremely daring. There's a lot to love in his game. But there's another prospect who's drafted, I think, way, way lower than he should have gone, and that's Andrew Crystal of the Washington Capitals. Talk me through his game and why he made this list.
For sure. I mean, Andrew Crystal is a hyper-skilled offensive winger who's been playing some fantastic hockey with the Kelowna Rockets in the WHL in recent years. He's 5'10", 174 pounds, mainly plays left wing, and he lit up the WHL in the past 2 seasons. In his draft year, he scored 95 points in just 54 games. In this past year, alongside Tisha Ginla, he was able to score 111 points in 62 games. He is really creative, really dynamic, very, very skilled. A lot of like the more hard skill aspects of the game are very much still a work in progress, and a big part of the reason why he slipped in the draft. But the raw skill is elite, and to project him at the NHL level alongside a player like Ryan Leonard, that would open up so much space and time for him to do his work, also certainly helps his chances of cracking the big leagues in a top 6 capacity, because he has all the skill and intelligence that you need to crack that role. But talk me through the next player on our list, a Toronto Maple Leafs prospect, which is certainly something that we haven't seen too much in the past couple of seasons, with Leafs prospects in the top range of drafted prospects, and Fraser Minten, who even got into a couple NHL games last season. Talk me through his game.
Absolutely. So that's part of the reasons why I made this list is that he was one of the few prospects in the last few drafts to actually, get a little shot in the NHL, and he almost stuck around. He did a great job with the Maple Leafs there. He's a fairly mobile center who loves to use speed and strength in order to get through contact. He's defensively responsible. Minten has decent hands, a good shot, but the playmaking really stands out with Minten. His ability to pry open passing lanes and use them really well is something that really stands out in Minten's game. He's more than deserving of making this list. I think he's got great assets, and I don't think it's going to be long before we see Fraser Minten in a Maple Leafs jersey for an entire season, maybe as soon as this fall. We'll see how that works out for him. But moving forward, we've got Tristan Luneau of the Anaheim Ducks, a QMJHL right shot defenseman. Mobility, intelligence, composure really are the standouts in his game. I think he's 6'2", 195 pounds, 200 pounds, something like that. So decent size on him as well. But yeah, among a glut of left shot defensemen and left shot prospects overall in Anaheim, he's a right shot that really stands out. I think he's got second pair potential. He can make a really, really good second pair defenseman long term for the Ducks. Again, really calm, really poised, not an overly aggressive player. Stick on puck all the time. Great gap control off the rush. So yeah, there's a lot to love here with Tristan Luneau. A great prospect of the Anaheim Ducks system. One of many, actually. So moving forward, we have the last prospect of our honorable mentions. Talk me through Elias Salamonsson's game. He really kind of upped his game in the last few years, hasn't he?
Massively, and he's back to the form that he was showing as a D-1. His draft year season was pretty rough overall, but Winnipeg still selected him at 55th overall in 2022, and he's a very young player for his draft class as an August 31st birthday, and that youth really helped his improved development after his draft year. So this past season, he was playing in the SHL full-time. He logged 11 points in 31 regular season games, but in the playoffs, he scored 6 points in 16 games, while logging anywhere between 20 and 27 minutes a night in the SHL playoffs. And this is a very mobile and rangy defenseman, 6'2", right shot, 185 pounds. And he's just really good at leveraging his elite level tools to create advantages. And the decision making is still something that could use a bit more refinement. That was his big knock in his draft year as well, but he's progressed significantly since then. So he definitely is a worthwhile candidate to crack this list for us. But moving on into our top 10 of players drafted outside the first round in the last 4 years with under 40 games played at the NHL level. Starting off with a player who almost cracked an NHL lineup out of training camp after being drafted in the second round just this past season. Felix Ungor-Sorum almost became a Carolina Hurricane right out of the gate after falling outside the first round, and he's just been fantastic. Talk me through his game a little bit.
Absolutely. Felix Ungor-Sorum is all about dependability, reliability, energy, and motor. Really, it's all about that within Ungor-Sorum's game. He's an incredibly intelligent forward, average size pretty much, but works his butt off on every shift and makes really good decisions in all three zones. And that's what almost made him make the lineup out of training camp for the Hurricanes in his draft year, in his draft +1, which for a prospect who's drafted 62nd overall isn't something you usually see. Right out the gate is ridiculous. But yeah, Ungor-Sorum's intelligence, his composure, his decision making, his ability to consistently be in the right spots and make the right decisions is really NHL translatable. And that's the thing that made me fall in love with this game in his draft year. When I first started watching him, I was immediately kind of enamored with his ability to anticipate play at a level that, I'm a big fan of hockey sense. When I see hockey sense, I'm very easily sold, and Ungor-Sorum has that in spades. Even though the skating's a main issue with Felix Ungor-Sorum, he showed right out of training camp that it's not a problem, that he's able to compensate for that lack of pure skating mechanics and pure speed and skating stride power with really intelligent positioning. So overall, I love this profile of player, and the fact that he almost made the Hurricanes lineup out of his draft year really is what put him in this list for me, and as well as the fact that he deserved it. It wasn't that he was playing above his level or just having really good games. He was thinking like an NHLer, which is exactly what you're looking for. But let's move over right quick to the 9th pick in our top 10, and that's Igor Chernyshov, who was just picked 33rd overall in the 2024 NHL draft, the only 2024 NHL draft eligible on this list. And I think he's really deserving of being on this list. I had no idea that he'd be slipping out of the first round. There was nothing to indicate that outside of his nationality to say that he should slip. There's so much to love with this game, right?
There's absolutely a bunch to like in his game, and while it might be a slight surprise for people to see him higher up than guys like Andrew Crystal and Tristan Luneau, for instance, we really do think that he could have even finished higher up in this list than 9th. This is a player who is really physically gifted, a 6'3" power winger, 203 pounds. He's a right shot. He can play both wings. He was playing a bunch of minutes in the KHL this past season, getting into 34 games with Dynamo Moscow. And while he only scored 3 goals and 4 points overall in that span, and 0 points in 10 playoff appearances, he was playing a really good shutdown defensive role against KHL competition. He was one of Dynamo Moscow's best defensive forwards, period, in the lineup. And while he was mainly playing bottom 6 minutes, he was a really stabilizing force when he was on the ice. He's very capable in the breakout and getting out with control and leveraging his mobility and his handling and his physicality all together to protect possession and move it up the ice with intelligence. and pace. And in the offensive zone, he has the handling and shooting skill to be a really, really dangerous scoring threat. The playmaking still needs a little bit of work to diversify his offensive toolkit, and the KHL probably isn't the league where he's going to get the most reps to practice that, but we think that this is a player who, at bare minimum, is going to be a reliable two-way bottom six piece, but has significant top six upside with his high-end tools in the offensive zone, especially with the handling and shooting standing out a bunch. But to wrap up this first segment, talk me through another very skilled power forward, this time a player who was drafted a year ago by the Seattle Kraken from the OHL, Carson Raykoff.
Absolutely. Carson Raykoff has absolutely taken off since his draft year. There's a lot of issues with his draft here that made it kind of slip down boards. Mainly, he was kind of just a pure shooter, and he kind of still is, but it was really to the detriment of playmaking plays, and he was very passive off the puck. Still kind of is, but to a lesser extent. But what really stood out is just the way he's put his game together and just made everything work together. With Raykoff, the goal-scoring ability stands out at you immediately. He was by far, for me, the best player in the Kitchener Rangers system. And they have some really good players in there, so that's saying something. Took games by control, made the World Juniors roster, just made himself known and present in every single game at every level of competition he's played this past year. So that's that ability to just step up his game massively since last year and round out his game, add some tools to his toolkit, become a bit more of a distributor and a playmaker without losing that goal-scoring touch, and adding some of the most flashy plays you'll see. All that together combines so well with Carson Raykoff. I think the Seattle Kraken got an amazing value pick here at 50th overall. Great stuff from them there, identifying the potential development route for Raykoff and anticipating this kind of progression. I didn't see it coming, and he's proved me wrong. So I'm really happy with having him at 8th overall here. That's our first segment done. We'll get into our second, where we look at picks 7 through 4 in our top 10 rankings of the prospects drafted outside of the first round. But first, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
I love sports. I love them so much that I just never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, the NHL playoffs have wrapped up at this stage, the Euros and Copa America are now also in the rear view. The options to get involved in the sporting world are a bit more limited in these summer months, but FanDuel lets you get in on the action nonetheless. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I want to, wherever I am at. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for every single person, every single day, all summer long. Whether you want to get in on the Major League Baseball action, want to take your hand at taking some swings on golf, or maybe even get curious about the Olympics, the choice is yours with FanDuel. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Alrighty, so let's move right on to our second segment. We'll look at picks 7 through 4 in our rankings of the top 10 prospects drafted outside of the first round. We'll start off at 7th overall with our first goalie, our first of two goalies. Trey Augustine is at 7th overall here. It's drafted by the Detroit Red Wings. Great selection from them in the second round. Plus value pick there, in my opinion. Overall, Augustine has been fantastic for Michigan State and the NCAA so far. Has done some great stuff in his freshman year, has kept his team in games where they shouldn't be. Really athletic, really smart, especially reads the play extremely well. Keeps his hand in front of him, makes sure that, he stays in shooting lanes and doesn't overcommit. He's a player that can still scramble and make desperation saves when he needs to, but most of the time he just bypasses that need by being well positioned, really intelligent, and he's so good on breakaways against. He's really, really good at stopping shooters one-on-one. It's the confidence, the aggression with which he plays, the ability to stay composed despite being able to leave his crease when he's sensing a shot coming. One-on-one, he's so difficult to beat. A lot of the time, you need to screen him. You need to get someone in front of his face and between his eyes and the puck in order to score. And that's what makes him so effective. So for me, Trey Augustine takes the 7th spot comfortably. He could have even been a bit higher, but I like him here at 7th. Let's move right on to Matt Poitras, who made the cut as well, who almost stuck around the entire season with the Boston Bruins. A great selection from him. Talk me through where he is picked, size, handedness, and what kind of profile we're talking about here.
Yeah, so Poitras is a 5'11", 181-pound right shot centerman who was drafted 54th overall in the second round in 2022 by the Boston Bruins. And this is a player who always had a decent amount of skill and intensity in his game, but in his draft year hadn't really put it together yet. So there's a lot of skepticism with his profile, especially with the high hopes going into his draft year. But he's really, really hit the burners since being picked. And last season, as you mentioned, he was only playing with Boston all season long. Like, he got injured, so he missed a decent chunk of the year, but he played 33 games with the Bruins where he logged 5 goals and 15 points. And he also played with Team Canada at the World Junior Championship, scoring 2 goals and 4 points in 5 games. This is an intelligent player who's able to get down low. He plays very well off puck. He's also a really good checking forward on, like, both going forward and back checking. And on top of that, he's been really exploring his offensive toolkit a lot more, especially the playmaking game, and especially like high pace, quick one-touch plays down low in the offensive zone is something that he does really well. This is a player who could develop into a solid bumper as well in the power play with time. And Boston got a real gem here in the second round. And he's a player that could have also featured higher up on this board. We were debating it, but in the end, that we think that the pure upside isn't quite as high as the 5 players that end up beating him out on this board. But a player who has already shown his capability of being a very, very good middle six forward at the NHL level with a fantastic team there in Boston.
Absolutely. Let's move right on to pick number 5 in our rankings. That's our second and last goalie of the list. Jacob Fowler of the Montreal Canadiens, selected in the 3rd round at 69th overall, which is really nice. He's been doing really, really good for Boston College. He got the starter role as a freshman and ran with it and was the best goalie, in my opinion, in the NCAA. Just ridiculous stuff that he was able to do for Boston College. And yes, he had a great team in front of him, but I'll add a caveat for that. He had a great offensive team in front of him. The defensive core there is still very offensive leaning. So Fowler had to do a lot of work from that back end on the blue in the crease, and did fantastic stuff from there. So calm, so poised, really, really, really intelligent. Never loses track of the puck. He's always got his feet square to the key, to the shooter. So he never has to make tough saves. He reads the play so well and anticipates the play so well with his feet that he's able to just consistently stay square to guys and just swallow pucks into his chest. That's really all he does, pretty much the whole game. But we've seen it especially in the championship, in the NCAA championship. He can make desperation saves. He made a beauty of a save, and I think it was the final. Was it the final against BU?
No, it was.
Right?
Yeah. Actually, no. I think it wasn't the final. It was late. It was late in the 3rd period when Boston College had already almost won the game. But it was on Ryan Green, and it was a tremendous post-to-post diving effort.
Yeah,
like the best save, maybe
semifinal.
even the best play from the NCAA all season long. It was fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah, it was awesome. So one of the best plays in the NCAA year overall. And yeah, it was in the semifinal against BU. It was an amazing save. So yeah, he's able to make those. Overall, just a lot to like there with Jacob Fowler in terms of his profile. Again, the composure, the calmness, he has all the mental aspects. And if you watch the Habs draft year video, he's a hockey nerd. Like he knows the game, he studies the game. Those things are invaluable for me. Like I love that stuff when I'm scouting prospects. But last but not least, let's talk about our number 4 pick in our top 10 list, and it is Jagger Firkus. The Seattle Kraken are well represented on this list. Firkus has been looking great since his draft year in 2022 when we selected 34th overall. It was 34th overall.
35th.
Was it 35th?
Yes.
Good question, right? But yeah, great selection from the Seattle Kraken there. Another plus value pick from them. Talk me through his game and why he's in our top 5.
Yeah, I mean, this is an undersized winger, certainly. He's 5'11", 161 pounds. He's a right shot right winger, but this is one of the most dynamic players outside the NHL still today. He put up 61 goals, 126 points in 63 games this past season, the regular season. And then in the playoffs, decided to play just as well, scoring 14 goals in 32 points in 20 games. which is very good for a very good Moose Jaw Warriors team as well. And he's now graduating up to the AHL, and this is a highly intelligent offensive dynamo. He has an absolutely wicked shot. Mechanically, he was easily a top 2, top 3 shooter in that 2022 draft class. And on top of that, he's a really intelligent playmaker and play creator. He's a dynamic puck handler and puck carrier. And while he is undersized, he has a very high motor on him. He never gives up on plays. He gets underneath opponents. He has decent leverage mechanics as well to still have a shot in board battles. And overall, this is a player who just lights play on fire and can also take over a game on his own. He has really, really big top 6 upside in him. And I think that especially with the Seattle, with how they're currently constructed, if you can pair Furcus with one of Shane Wright and Matty Beniers moving forward, and then you have Berkeley Catton with the other one, that's already a fantastic pair of duos there to move forward with in terms of dynamism. And you still have guys like Carson Rakoff in the wings coming up too. So lots of options there in Seattle, but Jagger Furcus is certainly one of the most exciting players drafted outside the first round from the past couple draft years. But that wraps up this segment for us here at Locked On NHL Prospects, and we'll be right back with the third segment with a really, really tight top 3 after this message from our sponsors.
Alrighty, so let's roll right through to our top 3 prospects drafted outside of the first round. We finally get to this top 3, and this was as difficult a conversation as it gets. And I'd say that pick number 3 here is closer to 1 than he is to 4.
Yes.
So let's get right into it here. At 3rd overall of the Montreal Canadiens, Lane Hutson, the 62nd overall pick in the 2022 NHL draft. What a selection! Everyone at every NHL team was looking at each other going, who's going to take this swing? Because it's a big swing to take. And Lane Hutson was absolutely worth the swing at 62nd overall. His progression in the NCAA with Boston University was amazing. The chemistry he built, especially this past season with Macklin Celebrini, that was the best 1-2 punch on any power play in any NCAA team. It was amazing to watch those two work together. Hutson is a hyper-offensive defenseman with amazing vision, amazing creativity, such good hands, and the consistent ability to just send people flying out of the zone because they're checking him hard at the offensive zone blue line. He can just make one move, and the forward in front of him just slides right out of his defensive zone. It's amazing to watch him go about it. Shifty, elusive, creative, intelligent. There are so many superlatives to describe Lane Hutson. He's absolutely worth a top 3 pick here. And he even played 2 NHL games with the Canadiens. He got 2 assists in his first 2 games. I was there live for one of them. My first live viewing of Lane Hutson ever, and it was a beauty. I saw the same things that made him so effective with BU be very, very effective in the NHL. He was still able to juke guys, still able to open up shooting and passing lanes, still able to get pucks on net from the blue line and just create havoc and chaos the way he knows how to do. He has this intrinsic ability to just create chaos around him, and it's been absolutely amazing to follow this guy's progression from day one. This is one of the first prospects I watched in his draft -1 up until his NHL debut. So it was amazing to watch that progression over the last 3-4 years, and really, really happy for this kid. He very much deserves it. But let's move on right into 2nd overall, and you'll get why it's so tight here in the top 3. Talk me through our 2nd overall selection in our top 10, Olen Zellweger of the Anaheim Ducks, who again are another team that's well represented on this list.
Indeed, and Olen Zellweger is another hyper-offensive defenseman, but he ended up edging out Hutson for 2 main reasons, maybe 3 main reasons. First, more professional experience. Second, he's a far better skater. He's incredibly mobile, one of the better skaters of players that are not NHL regulars, because he moves like very few defensemen or players, period, do. And thirdly, because he is a really solid defensive player as well. His defensive responsibility, his defensive intelligence, his ability to leverage his mobility as well in defensive situations gives him an edge over Lane Hutson in our books. But again, incredibly tight. We are splitting hairs here, but this is a player who is 5'10", 174 pounds, and he made his professional debut this past season after a dominant WHL career, which culminated with a 29-point 14-game playoff streak, which was insane to witness. And this past season, he split between San Diego in the AHL and Anaheim in the NHL. In the NHL, he played 26 games, logging 2 goals and 9 points. But in the AHL, he played 44 games, scoring 37 points from the blue line as a professional rookie, which is very good. And on top of that, Zellweger is very intelligent. He reads the play extremely well. He's very quick at processing play as well. He has great vision. He's a fantastic playmaker and activator from the blue line in the offensive zone. Really dynamic, really shifty, very manipulative as well. And overall, a player that Anaheim Ducks fans are deservedly very excited to have in their system, and likely also an NHLer this season onwards. So lots to be excited for in Anaheim, but it wasn't quite enough to edge out the number 1 spot here. Again, it was a 3-way race that we really struggled to separate, but in the end, the high-end NHL performance paired with solid games as well in the playoffs ended up making Logan Stankoven our number 1 pick here. And talk me through his game. What's impressed you the most in his progression since his draft year, and what made him such an effective NHL player right out of the gate?
Absolutely. And I knew Logan Stankoven was going to have no problem overcoming his size shortcomings from day one. He's 5'8", 180 pounds, something like that. Very stout build, and those guys usually work out. It's the stout guys you need to look out for, because those guys will surprise you with the amount of physicality and intensity they can bring on the forecheck. And Stankoven is the definition of intensity. He is an absolute bulldog on the forecheck, on the back check. A great attention to detail as well that he's developed over the past 3 years. I think overall, Stankoven in his draft year was very much a pedal to the metal, truck through you at all costs type of undersized forward. Since then, the attention to detail, the attention to stick lifting and stick checking, stick positioning, body positioning, all that stuff has grown massively over the past few years. But you combine that intensity, that speed, that work rate, that motor, with the pure skill he has in terms of goal scoring, playmaking, stick handling. He's just, offensively, for me, he's a complete package. He doesn't have anything lacking in his offensive skill set, on top of being one of the hardest workers out of that draft class in the 2021 NHL draft. For me, it's an absolute shocker that he was available to the Dallas Stars in the 30s, in the late 30s. Was it the early 40s even? He was like a mid-second round pick. It wasn't
47th overall in the
47th overall is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think Logan Stankoven should have gone anywhere past the first round, and he's showing it since then. He's been a key part of the Dallas Stars. He was an important cog in their playoff run. Was one of their best players on some nights, including we're talking about a roster with Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn and Wyatt Johnston and Jason Robertson. Like, he was one of their best players on some nights. So, not a shocker to me that he's done what he's done since his draft year. I saw it coming, and I'm really happy to be proven right about this kid, because when I see undersized players, that's one of the things I look for. Is first, you have that kind of stocky build that'll allow you to sustain physical pressure from a 30-year-old 6'3", 200-pound NHL defenseman, and how good are you at playing inside contact, at outworking your opponents, at getting to loose pucks first. Stankoven has everything I look for in undersized forwards. So, not a shocker to me that he's done what he's done. By the way, I forgot to mention off rip the criteria to be on this list. So you have to have played less than 40 NHL games, and you must have been drafted in the last 4 years outside of the first round. So those are the criteria there. So all the players on this list made that list. If there's a prospect that you think should have been on this list that wasn't, just check that criteria. We'll see if they match. I'm sure we did a pretty good job in not forgetting anyone, but if we have, let us know down below. That is it for this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think of the episode, what you think of the rankings, who you want us to talk about next. And again, if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of August. And by the way, for August, we're off season technically, so we'll be posting three episodes a week instead of the usual 5. So just make sure to check out for that. This has been Hattie Kalakash with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.